Hi everyone, and welcome to our live Q&A on talking about MS at work. I'm Marion, part of the MS Society social media team, and I'm going to be your host this evening. Joining us to answer your questions on work and MS, we have Cherelle, who draws on her experience of living with MS to raise awareness, promote inclusivity, and empower others. Having faced challenges and less than ideal employment experiences, she is passionate about encouraging workplaces to embrace diversity, equity, inclusivity, and accommodations. As a life coach and mental health first aid instructor, Cherelle supports others in overcoming barriers, fostering self-advocacy, and thriving despite life's challenges. And Cherelle is also a recipient of our MS Society Impact Award for raising awareness and building connections with others, members of the MS community. So, hi Cherelle, it's great to have you joining us this evening.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming along. And next, our other guest, we have Dr. Blanca D Doos, a senior research fellow at the Centre for Rehabilitation and Ageing Research at the University of Nottingham. In 2024, she was awarded the Early Career Fellowship from the MS Society to develop her work on job retention and vocational rehabilitation interventions for people with MS. So Blanca's research focuses on keeping people with MS in work. So hi Blanca, we're really glad you could join us this evening.
Hello, thank you very much.
So tonight you can ask our panel questions via the chat on YouTube and in the comments on Facebook, and we will try to get through as many questions as we can. But if we don't get through all of your questions, don't worry, you can still contact our MS helpline by calling our free phone on 0808 800 8000, or you can email our MS helpline at helpline@mssociety.org.uk. And just so you know, we do work with the Disability Law Service and the Legal Services Agency to provide free, confidential legal advice to people affected by MS. And you can access this service through our MS helpline as well. And we're just going to pop those details in the chat so you can have them for later. We want everyone to be able to share their lived experiences, but just to make you aware, our guests won't be able to give direct advice about specific issues or disputes between employees and employers. So just bear that in mind if you are sending us your questions this evening. Right, so we are going to kick off with some questions that we've had ahead of the live stream that were sent in via our Instagram channel. And I'm just going to get straight into the questions. So the first couple of questions are around reasonable adjustments in the workplace that people living with MS have sent us in. So the first question, Blanca, is for you. This one, this person says, I am newly diagnosed. Do work have to make adjustments? I work in an office and in a showroom.
Well, the first thing to say is well done for being newly diagnosed and thinking about reasonable adjustments. We need to think about the potential impact of MS at work from very early in our journey, not once we start having some difficulties. The question I would like to share back is, do you need adjustments at work? So under the Equality Act, which is a series of anti-discrimination laws that protect people from discrimination and unfair treatment in the workplace and society, people with MS are protected from the point of diagnosis, which means employers are legally obliged to provide you with reasonable adjustments to overcome the challenges or difficulties that MS may cause you. So you will have to disclose, or the employer may have reasonable reasons to believe that you have an illness or a disability. So for example, if a person is in a wheelchair, it doesn't matter if you don't disclose to your employer, they can visibly see that you will have some accessibility difficulties. So if you are newly diagnosed and you feel that receiving some support at work will help you manage your work demands and continue being productive. I think in that case, you can choose to disclose to your manager or human resources representative, and they can look into what support will benefit you to remain at work, and just explain that you are sharing this information because you are committed to remain productive at work. However, if you are managing well your MS at work, you don't feel like it's making an impact on your productivity, you may choose to keep this information to yourself and share it at a point when you are ready to have this sort of conversation.
That's great, Blanca. Thanks so much. Following on from that, we have another question or a statement more around workplace not adapting. So this person has said, my workplace does not adapt to my medical needs. Blanca, Cherelle, do you want to follow up with that, or?
Yes, so this is a challenging but very common question that we face, and is that under the Quality Act, the employer needs to provide these adjustments, but if they don't provide them, it could be considered as discrimination. However, sometimes it can be difficult to prove what is discrimination, and the key barrier we face is that the employer is the person deciding what is reasonable. So what you, an employee, may consider reasonable to work from home, but the employer may say the role does not accommodate you to work from home. So that will be a challenging conversation to have. If you have an occupational health representative at work that may have suggested some adjustments and the employer has rejected, I would recommend you, for example, speak with your team of healthcare providers, the neurology clinic, the neurologist, or the MS nurse can write a letter for your employer explaining, for example, some of the invisible symptoms, or advocating for the need of that support at work. And that is a second opinion from a professional explaining why you will need this support. And overall, I will consider to be prepared to negotiate with your employer about what they are willing to provide, and you might be able to find a common ground of what they consider reasonable. So, for example, if working from home is not an option, they may allow you to work in a quiet office so that you are able to manage, remove the distractions or noise, or help you manage fatigue better.
Yeah.
Great,
And just
thank you.
off the back of what Blanca is saying, is I would say from experience, it's good to have that conversation with your HR manager and even your manager to see what can be done for you, and also knowing what your wants and needs are. You know, what do you need to have changed? So, and is it reasonable for yourself as well? Because that really helps. And on top of that, I would even say to you, do your own research and find out what other MSs have experienced. I know that one shoe does not fit all, but sometimes it's to have that conversation to identify what resources have been implemented or changes have been made for somebody else going through similar to you. And don't forget the MS helpline if you wanted to have that conversation with somebody who's experienced with that knowledge and information.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. So our next question says, how do you know when it's time to reduce your hours at work? Blanca, do you want to go with that one?
Yeah, I think this is a very personal decision. Reducing your working hours is a great strategy to help you manage fatigue, or if the workload has become too much, if you reduce your working hours, it can help you to get the work done and not use all of your resources to get the work done, and then you cannot have like a personal or a social life. However, working fewer hours have economical implications, so you will have a lower income per month, and it can also affect your state pension. So those are things to consider before reducing your working hours. But if you are in a position where work is getting too much, and reducing these working hours can help you to work for more years because you are able to manage your image better, I would recommend you two key things. So the first one is learning about your employer's flexible working policies. Sometimes they may allow you to test for a period of time working for fewer hours to see whether this is actually helping you, for example, in managing this fatigue or managing your workload. And the other thing is, before you request this, plan what will work best for you. So sometimes it can be working 4 days a week or 3 days per week. Some people, from the people we have worked with, we have noticed that sometimes people prefer to have Wednesday off because you can work Monday and Tuesday, and then you have a break in the middle of the week, and then you have Thursday, Friday. Others might prefer having Monday or Friday off. So just think about what will suit your needs better and what will be most suitable for your economic circumstances and your work.
Yeah. I think as well, consider your mental health when it comes to knowing what you need. Think about the health risks involved in actually reducing your hours as well. So when you're thinking about your health, think, can I manage actually doing 3 to 4 working days, or does it have to be less than that? From my personal experience, I was told that, oh, you can do this, but I wasn't really asked. So once you know what you want and know how to manage that, ask for regular reviews. Can we have a look at this point, how this is going, and can we possibly review that change and understand what that looks like in terms of, like was mentioned already, the financial well-being aspect of it as well. And also see if the job is suitable for yourself, because if those reasonable adjustments can't be made, it doesn't mean that you should reduce your ambition. It just means that you need to look elsewhere for probably a different career at this point, because maybe it's just too much overall if there's no job satisfaction.
Great, thank you both. That's really good advice. The next comment that we have, this person seems to have found a solution to reasonable adjustments, but they said, we find a solution, it works for a few weeks, and then it doesn't. And they feel like that they're annoying their manager by always having to add other adjustments or adjust the adjustments. Cherelle and Blanca, do you have any advice for this person?
I think be kind to yourself. Don't think that you're annoying anybody. You're definitely not a burden to anybody, honestly. I think if anything, if you're thinking like that, you have to revisit your own limiting beliefs and your self-doubt and ask yourself, why do you feel the way that you do about your current circumstances? What you're going through is beyond you. So take the time to really journal and reflect and understand what that looks like in terms of finding solutions that do actually work for you, and have that conversation with your manager or somebody else, a colleague maybe, to see how you could actually think about your next steps and how to move forward with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great message because it is true. You may be putting unnecessary pressure on yourself, worrying too much because you are asking for help. But remember, you are asking for these changes because you are committed to be productive. You want to be the best employee you can be in your role. So you are not asking for these changes to just do less work. It's because you are committed to your position. And also understand that it is very difficult to find reasonable adjustments that match your needs. MS fluctuates over time, so what works one time, it may change. So they are meant to be reviewed over time. Just try to explore and become more of an expert about your own MS and think about, well, under these circumstances, these sort of adjustments work, but when the workload is too high or there are too many projects at the same time, or your personal circumstances are going through a difficult time, then is when your needs change. So hopefully this problem solving approach over time and becoming more familiar about how your needs change at work will help you find the right adjustments that will change throughout the year in your job.
Great, thank you. And the next one here is from a person who said, I'm a chef, I was diagnosed in 2020 and still here doing the exact same job. Cherelle, Blanca, do you have any advice or words of wisdom for this person?
I think for me, a personal experience, I've not been a chef, but I have had to make reasonable adjustments for my work. It hasn't been easy to decide that sometimes it's time to change. Yeah, changing your careers and so on and so forth. Because again, you need to be kind to yourself and understand what you can actually manage, what are your capabilities, what are your abilities now. How has your life changed? What circumstances have changed for you? And be kind to yourself. I'd also say review how things are impacting what you do in the workplace, and can those reasonable adjustments be made for you? So really just understanding what your current circumstances are. you know, and what's kept you in that role? Is it that you're passionate about it, so you want to stay committed, or is it that you're just staying there for safety? Because you need to think about the health and safety side of things.
Mhm.
Could there be an accident? Because maybe there's something wrong with your hands. Maybe that, you know, your MS is impacting the way you, your mobility, so to speak, and when it comes to managing your hand movements, etc. Think about the impact, the long-term impact, and if you were to have an accident, what could happen? So really revisit the reason, revisit your why.
Perfect. Blanca, do you have anything to add to that one?
Well, just it's great that the person continues to remain in the same job, and again, MS affects very different to each person. So if you are still able to continue doing your job, is being a chef can be quite physical, and as Cherelle mentioned, you will need to use your hands and high temperatures. So it is quite positive, and we know people who have physical jobs and continue being at work. So it depends on how MS is affecting you. But as Cherelle mentioned, if for whatever reason things start to change in the future, it is worth considering about your broader set of skills and how you could continue using your skills as a chef in a slightly different, for example, educational role for chefs who want to become more successful. But well done, and it is good to know that work is still very much in your agenda.
Great, thank you both so much. And for anyone watching, we've got lots of information and support on our website. So we will put the link in our chat for our Work in MS pages for you to read up on if you have any other questions about reasonable adjustments. And also, if you want to find out more about the work that we do on employment policy and advocacy, you can find loads more on our website. So we'll pop the link in the comments now. And don't forget, if you do have any questions about disclosing your MS at work or any other questions, please pop them in the chat and we will get Blanca and Cherelle to answer them during the live. So we'll move on to the next set of questions, and these ones really focus around symptom management because we know, Blanca and Cherelle, you mentioned before, not everybody's MS is the same, and people will experience different symptoms at different times. So the next question is how to deal with brain fog at a corporate job. Is there anything that you can do? Cherelle, do you want to go with this one as a lived experience?
Yeah, what tends to help me may not help you, but this is what happened for me. I found it was useful to make notes with everything and also ask for permission to record meetings so that I could listen back to it at any given time. I practiced mindfulness a lot more as well, so that mindfulness and meditation, so that I could clear my mind. Sleeping habits were really useful for me as well, acknowledging my sleeping patterns, my sleeping hygiene as well. How many hours of sleep am I getting for my age? Um, Remaining calm was also useful for me because I would sometimes have that in the moment when I think, oh no, my speech, my words, I can't get them out. So I would always stay calm and try to manage that effectively. And I think, yeah, just really keep diaries as well to manage yourself. So even if you have to have more than one diary, be in your phone, color code it as well. That helped me to just remember things. Um, and honestly, telling somebody that that's what I go through actually helped me as well. So telling my manager that sometimes this happens, what I really did appreciate was that they would move meetings for me. So not early in the morning, probably a bit later on in the morning, so then they know that I'm actually functioning. And just giving me those reasonable adjustments to allow me to be a part of the team, even when I felt like I couldn't be. Those were really helpful.
Perfect, thank you. Blanca, do you want to
Yeah,
give any advice?
absolutely. I think Cherelle has illustrated this quite beautifully because you have mentioned how, so we know that 65% of people with MS experience memory and thinking difficulties, but actually what is causing these brain fog difficulties at work? It can be that you are fatigued, it can be temperature, it can be that you have pain and cannot concentrate, or it can be so many different variables that are causing these difficulties at work, and everyone's job is different. And thinking about a corporate job, the example of the question, you might be dealing with high workloads, tight deadlines, projects with competing interests. So brain fog can actually be quite frustrating because it is as well one of the invisible symptoms. So people at work may not understand what you are experiencing. So as Cherelle mentioned, if your manager or a coworker knows that this is something that happens from time to time, they may be able to provide you a little bit of help and support. And apart from the examples that Cherelle has shared, so I think it's important to understand throughout your day, what are the sort of work-related activities or personal events in your life which can also impact your concentration abilities at work. Are any days where you have, for example, to take the children to practice football or cricket, or is it that you need to do some cleaning in the house and all of a sudden you use all your energy? So what are the factors that are causing you to be more fatigued or having more attention and difficulties at work? Using management tools like calendars and planners are also exceptional. If you are dealing with large projects, you could be breaking down into smaller tasks, help you prioritize according to, so for example, if the morning is the best time of the day for you, do the more complex tasks in the morning, and you can do in the evening a little bit more administrative or tasks that require fewer cognitive demands. Something very important and is usually not mentioned is please keep your desk tidy. We don't want to waste our time looking around the desk, getting distracted because it's full of things, or your computer has multiple files, they are not organized, and you are using much more energy and attention trying to figure out what you are doing as opposed to concentrating in the task. And finally, we need to take care of both our physical and mental health. So making sure you eat healthy, you keep active, and you keep hydrated and take regular breaks at work can really help you make the best out of your day.
Thank you both really, really good bits of advice there. And actually the next question, I think you've both answered a bit as well, but we'll just touch on it in case you've forgotten anything. The next question is basically, my mind goes blank so easily at work. How do I stop this? So Blanca, I think the clear desk policy, those other bits and pieces about energy reserving, and Cherelle, your bits and pieces of advice around meditation, journaling, writing lists, and all of those bits and pieces. Is there anything else maybe we'd want to say to this person on how to stop that kind of blank moments happening throughout the day?
I think pacing's good. So when you it's been touched on a little bit actually. So knowing when your difficult times can be and managing those, recording that even for yourself. What's your pain looking like at what time? What's your memory like when you first get up? And like Blanca said already, in terms of nutrition, what are you actually eating? Are they superfoods that help you to manage the levels of energy that you have produced in your brain to give you the necessary chemicals to move forward? Yeah, that's something that I've recently engaged in as well. So I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I guess I can also add that it happens to all of us from time to time. Our minds just go blank, and there are many reasons why this can happen. Sometimes it can be a bit more stressful if you are thinking, oh, everything is my mess. Sometimes it can be just normal that our minds go blank from time to time. It can be stress, anxiety, lack of sleep. So many factors can contribute to this. I guess for other corporate jobs and office workers, emails and phone calls can be extremely distracting. So if you keep getting these notifications popping up of emails, it is quite easy to look around, see your email, completely forget what you were doing, lost track. So if you keep your list, remove distractions, it could help you. And if your mind goes blank, try to take some time to focus and don't get too nervous because again, you could explain even if you are in a meeting like, sorry, I just lost the track of my thoughts. I need a couple seconds to regain my orientation and then continue.
Great. Thanks so much. So one thing that people often do have to navigate is telling their employer if they have MS or not. Blanca, can you talk to that point a wee bit more, maybe a bit more about your research on disclosing MS in the workplace?
Yes, so this is a very good question, whether to tell your employer or not that you have MS. And I think sometimes we know from research, from evidence, that even before diagnosis, 5 years before diagnosis, some people with MS miss days of work. So by the time they are diagnosed, they have already had higher levels of sick leave, or they may have been underperforming. So if you get this diagnosis, it can be quite positive to, once you have accepted and deal with the diagnosis and you're ready, it could be positive to tell your employer or a human resources representative that you have MS. And this is what explains the difficulties you have experienced at work. But work is good for your health and you're committed to staying productive. And therefore, you might benefit from an assessment to understand what sort of modifications to your role or duties could help you maintain a good level of productivity at work. Now, if MS is really not impacting your work, I will take some time to think about the pros and cons of disclosing. The problem is that once you say that you have MS, you cannot take away this information, and there is a lot of misunderstanding about MS. Sometimes people know another person with MS who looks a certain way, and if you don't fit their criteria, they may not believe that you have MS, or they may not understand why one day you can do something and the next day you're having difficulties with that. So I will be quite cautious about what to say and how to say it. But everyone is different, and if you want to tell your employer and be honest about your circumstances, I think it's good. When considering that this process of disclosure, think about what do you want to say. You do not need to share everything about your MS. You just need to say whatever is related to work. So from time to time, you may have difficulties concentrating, or you may be a little bit slower doing some task, or heat may affect you, so you cannot work in a warm environment, for example. Think to whom you want to share this information, and you may need to have someone with you if that helps you as emotionally. And then the fact that if you tell your employer that you have MS, the employer can keep this information confidential. So you can choose for your employer to know, but not your coworkers, or you might want all your coworkers to know about it. And you will be surprised about how many other people in your organization have MS and are very proud of you sharing this information. So it can be a superpower, like you are empowered at work, you are sharing this information because you are committed. Work is good for your health. You want to remain there. And that's why you are sharing this information.
Perfect. And you mentioned there, Blanca, about mentioning to other co-workers and colleagues. We actually had a question there from someone asking about tips for handling workplace conversations about MS with their colleagues. So not just necessarily disclosing it as a way of making, small adjustments between them and their manager for them, but actually disclosing it to their work friends and colleagues. Do you have any tips for handling that, or?
Yes, so it's similar to the conversation you will have with your employer. I think you have to share whatever you are comfortable with. I know of people who have decided to do a PowerPoint presentation and explain, just have a round where you just have a few slides about yourself and you explain, it's something that you have just been diagnosed, you are managing well, you may be in a treatment, for example, but from time to time you will have difficulties concentrating at work. It affects you in a personal way. That explain that, it's not the same to two people. There are resources from the MS Society, for example, to help you navigate this conversation, and they will get to know a little bit more of yourself. So just keep it as closer to your personality as possible and share some information so that they understand that MS is different between people. It's unpredictable and it can progress over time. So that might help them get an idea of what MS is for you.
Okay, perfect. Cherelle, do you have any tips? Some of them with MS maybe that you would give to this person?
Yeah, I would say the same as Blanca, because my experience was that I actually did get MS Society to send some information to my employer, and then we went through it together. And then, because I did say, I don't know what this is, but I think we're gonna have to learn about this together. And so said, so done. So that was really helpful for me. And then I did actually do a presentation on it, like a 20-minute one, just saying, asking them to ask me any questions that they think I might be able to answer. And then we actually did a research project together, and then they were able to feed back to me. So it was really helpful to have that, because then there was a bit more of diversity, inclusion, equity in the workplace, because then they could see that actually I might be different from the other person who has MS, because it's my needs that need to be met. So having that person-centered, holistic approach to managing health and well-being in the workplace alongside other autoimmune diseases. So yeah, it was really helpful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And just to say on that as well, Cherelle, you mentioned getting some resources from us. We do have lots of information and support on our MS and work pages, information for employers and employees. So if that's something that you'd like to check out, you can find the link in the comments section. So I'll move on to a few questions that we've been getting in the chat and the comments. This one, maybe both of you can have a go at answering it, but they said, I work full time for a small company and they have said that I cannot perform my role on less hours. What can I do about this? So maybe Blanca, do you want to start off with that? Is there something there with the Equality Act that could maybe help this person with reasonable adjustments or something like that?
So this is a big challenge, and it's the fact that it's a small organization, so larger organizations may be able to accommodate a person working fewer hours and ensure that other employees can pick up the workload. But if there are few people employed by the organization, reducing your hours may not be reasonable for the employer. I think a good approach for these circumstances will be contacting Access to Work, which is a government fund that may be able to offer or cover some information, some support, for example, for a work buddy, someone that may be able to assist you with some activities. But again, this depends on the size of the organization, how much money they are bringing in, and how many people they actually are to complete the duties of the job.
Great, thank you. Cherelle, any advice, or do you want to come in on that? You okay?
I think just you have to take it as it comes in a way. It sounds harsh, but you have to really ask yourself, can you still do the job if they're not allowing you to reduce your hours? You know, I don't like to say quit, definitely not, don't do that, because you are committed to it. But just, I think occupational health is also useful. Applying for the reasonable adjustments through the DirectGov website, because they do the assessment and they have the conversation with the employer as well to accommodate
Okay.
those possible reasonable adjustments. But otherwise, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Okay, thank you both so much. Another question here that we've had in on the chat is, I have recently changed jobs for the first time since being diagnosed with MS. My employer is trying to be supportive, but have asked that I make up any time lost for treatment days, which is once every 4 weeks. And the person says that they are finding that this means that they're much more tired during the week, and that they have to work extra hours. And they want to know, is there any advice on how to handle this, as they don't feel able to ask for further adjustments when they are technically giving them the day off for treatments every other month? It's a bit of a tricky one, trying to manage this person's treatment plan, but also stay in work and find that kind of balance with reasonable adjustments. Any advice there from you, Blanca or Cherelle?
So one key reasonable adjustment that the employer should provide is disability leave, which is allowing you time off for medical procedures. You are actually being put at a disadvantage if you are forced to work these hours that are, so thank you for allowing you to go to your medical appointments, which of course, if you don't receive these medical treatments, your head will get worse and your performance will get even worse. So if your employer allows you disability leave, which can be requested as in some additional days of leave to attend some treatment, or if your symptoms are going bad, that could be quite beneficial. So maybe try to speak with occupational health, or if you work for a large organization, there might be a group supporting people with illnesses or disability to see if they can advocate for you. Same with a union representative. If you are a member of a union group, they might be able to have these conversations with your employer, because they could be discriminating against you from taking time off for medical appointments.
Yeah.
I think for me in the past, although I don't think it's helpful sometimes, but just in the meantime, whilst you get that information that Blanca suggested, um, consider using some of your annual leave for that time as well, because at least when you take the annual leave, you're taking just maybe if you say can I have 2 hours of annual leave, depending on your policies, and see how that works, because then at least you're not making up any time, you're just taking time that is owed to you. That's what I had to do. I didn't enjoy doing it, but it meant that I didn't have to give any more time back to the organization.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Another question just in the chat that we've got time for is from a person who said, I recently made the decision to reduce my working hours. Do you have any advice on what to say to friends and family who don't fully understand why I'm doing this? Any advice or any bits there? Maybe Cherelle, do you want to go with that one first?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's none of your business, to be honest. I did it because I had to. My health was at risk and I needed to do it. How are you feeling after you've done it? If you feel amazing after you've reduced your hours, because you're not at all reducing your ambition, you're reducing your hours because you need to take care of yourself, your whole self. So it's important to just recognize that you've made a decision that is suitable for you. Nobody else should be impacted by that decision. And if they are, then have that conversation. But if they are not, honestly, you don't owe anybody an explanation as to why you've done what you've done.
Great, thank you. Blanca?
Yeah, I think Cherelle was spot on with her answer. They clearly don't understand MS,
Yeah,
and it is your personal decision at the end of the
yeah.
day. And they may have some difficulty understanding what is going on, but you do not need to justify or explain how difficult things are, and that's why you have to reduce your working hours. So I think, especially when you have MS, when fatigue can be challenging and you are limiting the amount of things you have to do, you have to be really smart about the decisions that you take in your life. So if reducing your working hours can help you have a much better quality of life, why not doing it? So maybe have a conversation with them, or if you feel like they are treating you in a different way, try to address the conversation in terms of, I assess, you are the only one who knows what is going on in your life. So what is it really bothering them? And just spend time with people who actually appreciate you and make you feel welcome. And if
Hmm.
they don't accept it, they are telling you more about themselves than yourself.
Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect. Thanks so much. The last question that we've got here for both of you really is around benefits. And this person wants to know if you've got any tips when applying for personal independence payment, which is PIP, or any other benefits while working or and living with MS. Blanca and Cherelle, do you have any tips on maybe applying for PIP, or like the mental load that it can take on, or any other support that you would point this person in?
Yeah, I think for me, my personal experience was that I wish I didn't do it on my own. Because it was more trouble than it's worth. If you think about the symptoms that we experience and the unpredictability and the fact that sometimes stress can have an impact on our system, yeah, on our systems, yeah, for real, our systems, our nervous systems, then I would suggest doing that with somebody. You have some support, be it your housing association, be it your doctor. Try and get some support with it because it is very stressful. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. It was very difficult. But then you've got some people who haven't experienced it in that way. I think as well, think of your worst day because that is really what you're assessing for, not the day when you felt great and you were able to fill out the whole form. Think about the effort it took for you to get to that point of trying to fill out the form in the first place. But yeah, definitely don't do it by yourself. Collect your information from your GPs, from your neurologists, from any medical professionals, and do it that way.
Great. Blanca, any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is value in applying for PIP because it can, for example, for those who have mobility difficulties, it can provide you with a mobility card, which will avoid public transport to get to work. Also, receiving more financial support at the end of the month can mean that you reduce your working hours, which means by extension, you can work for more years, which is really positive. Similar to Cherelle, my advice is also think about your worst day as mentally challenging or psychologically challenging it can be for you to think about that. But the people conducting the assessment does not necessarily understand MS. There have been huge issues with these assessments, and the MS Society has advocated for the problems that these assessments can bring. And also something I have seen is that sometimes people with MS are experts at overcoming barriers, and you yourself have changed completely the way you do things. So when you are doing an assessment, it seems like there could be fewer problems. But for example, some people may have difficulties using their hands, and instead of using jeans or a blouse with buttons, they might be using some leggings and a shirt or a t-shirt that you just put through your head and no buttons. That is clearly a change and a difficulty getting dressed, but you have overcome it by doing something in a different way. So try to think back about all the things you have changed in the way you do things to overcome the difficulties of MS, and your worst day of MS, not the day of the assessment. That is the key information that they need to ensure you get a fair assessment, if that's possible.
Perfect. That's really, really good advice from both of you. Thank you so much. And just for anyone watching, if you do have any questions about benefits or applying for PIP, you can contact our benefits advice service via our MS helpline. And we're going to put all of the details on how to do that in the chat. Well, that's about all we have time for today. Thanks so much to Cherelle and Blanca for joining us and sharing all of your expertise and experiences. If you've missed this live stream or simply want to watch it again, it will be available at the same link that you're watching it on now, on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that tuned in and for everyone asking questions in the comments. Thank you so much for that. If we didn't get to your question this evening, do contact our MS helpline, or you can send us a direct message on our Facebook page. But like I said before, all of the details for those support services are in the chat now. So thank you again to our guests and to all of you for joining us and asking your questions, and have a lovely evening. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.